We'll call to order the February 8th meeting of the Lake Arbour Watershed Protection Commission. Actually, before we begin, it's not on here, we do have a new appointment, and although we all know her, let her introduce herself and let us know where she's coming from.
Certainly, I'm Heather Hunter. I'm the city administrator for the city of Lewiston. I have been involved with the watershed since inception as the treasurer until recently, and Tracy took over that position. So,
All right, excellent. Representative for the city of Lewiston.
correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we do have a new treasurer that we appointed last meeting, so Tracy is here. Nice to see you. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the December 7th and January 10th meeting minutes. So are there any adjustments that folks saw? Amendments? Seeing none, I'll seek a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting the minutes? Minutes are accepted.
I'm
Abstaining? Abstaining?
Yes.
Yes. Yep, abstaining because we were not here. In keeping with our newer policy regarding reports, I included the educational outreach and statement of revenues and expenditures that Tracy sent us, our consent agenda item. Does anyone want one of those taken out? All right, seeing none, I'll seek a motion to accept those.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? All right, excellent. It's unanimous. Next item on our agenda is public comment. So we would invite members of the public who wish to address LawTech to do so. Just please state your name before you begin for the record, so that it's on the videos. Is there anyone that would like to speak? All right, seeing none. See, Rick, the meeting's not going to be that long.
You zip it right through.
I do have one point. I actually forgot to add election of officers. I put it at the end because I think it makes sense there. However, it occurred to me that whoever gets elected may want to be taking specific notes for themselves because we don't have a clerk, so some of that work falls on the officers. Specifically, I think the chair and vice chair. So if there are no objections, I would ask that we elect our chair and vice chair, secretary and treasurer now with motions, with a motion stating that those individuals will take over at the end of the meeting, that way they're not thrust into having to run the meeting.
So moved.
Any objections? I'm not seeking a motion because you guys didn't actually approve the agenda, so I don't need a motion to change the agenda. I'm just saying if there are no objections, yeah. All right, so if there are no objections, let's start with secretary. Is there a nomination?
Is that the same as clerk? And I'd like to...
No, secretary would be Mike's current role, and generally we nominate. My assumption is would be...
I nominate Mike Broadbent.
You accept the nomination?
I second that.
All right, seconded.
I don't think we need seconds on that.
No, you don't.
Oh, you don't
we don't
need
need a
seconds,
second on
that's
nomination. But any other nominations? All right, seeing none, we'll vote on that. All in favor of electing Mike as secretary? Unanimous. Nominations for treasurer?
I nominate Tracy.
Second. Nope.
Yeah.
I'll forward it.
Tracy, do you accept the nomination?
No seconds.
Yes.
All right, is there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll vote on that. All those in favor? Next, we'll move on to chair. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Camille Parrish.
Will you accept the nomination?
I'll accept.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor of appointing Camille? Unanimous with Camille abstaining, I think. I want to vote for herself. And now we'll do nomination for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Rick to remain as vice chair.
Any other nominations?
Yeah, you accept the nomination?
Yeah.
Yes,
I
okay.
nominate Amy,
Okay.
Oh.
so we have,
Applicant
since
contest.
you said you didn't want to do it last time.
I will stay on and be glad to step in. I
I
have
am
no
not-
issue
I-
at all.
I would not accept the nomination.
Okay, so Amy did not accept the nomination, so there we go. We have one nomination. Any other nominations? Being none, all those in favor of electing Rick? Unanimous? I'm assuming Rick is abstaining.
Opposing.
Opposing?
Seal
Put that in
Sorry,
the
Robert.
record. All right.
My wife didn't vote for me for Senate either, so.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so, on to staff report. Yes.
Evan, can we discuss clerk since we're talking about officers?
That's an excellent question. We don't currently have the job description for clerk. If we want to appoint someone for clerk, we can. I can tell you, Mike, is okay if I, Mike reached out to me and said that he is talking to the AWD Board of Trustees about possibly reinstating a system where the superintendent would be clerk. So we could certainly nominate someone.
Okay.
I guess I had that background information, everyone else didn't. It made sense to me that we would abstain from electing a clerk until that could be kind of be worked out. Does that make sense to everyone? Is there anyone that opposes that? All right, excellent. Thank you for bringing that up. Next, we'll move on to staff report. Mike said that there were some things he wanted or needed to talk to us about, so I stuck them here. I also stuck them down as possible new business in case he needs us to take action. So,
Okay, so I'll just fire up the laptop real quick.
Oh, wonderful way.
So we actually, you all can see that. I have three farm proposals that have come in through the city of Auburn, and I've forwarded those along for the commission to review these. I only have one proposal that's complete, and that's for this property at 833 Summer Street in Auburn, Maine. I'm not sure if part of the packet, was this whole thing forwarded to everybody? Evan, this whole proposal?
No.
Okay,
may not have done that, yeah.
I can forward this to all the commissioners. They do have a proposal here for, it sounds like an ice cream order, 2 full-size horses, 1 small horse, and 3 miniature horses. But so this is going to be kind of a hobby farm. They do have a phosphorus plan, a manure management plan, and they did provide a map, which I should have put this up on the overhead, that kind of shows how they're going to structure this on this piece of property. Obviously, I know, so I'm kind of just bringing this forward for the commission to look at and review. I know in the past these might have gone through the watershed manager, so I'm just kind of covering for that for right now. Looking at this, I think they have everything here for this. The only thing I am concerned about is, if you look at the contour lines for the property, the lake is basically right here. And this entire property does, it won't show on the screen, look at that. The whole property does slope downwards right towards the lake, and the bottom of the property is in a wetland area. And that is part of where they do have a small buffer down there, but they do have their pasture going into that kind of wetland at the bottom of the property. So I'm not sure how we want to handle this, whether we want staff to do a recommendation or how we want to handle this. Again, I've never done these myself before. I guess if it was me, I would be okay with this proposal, but I would want their pasture and the use of the property to stay out of that. You can kind of see it, that blue hash mark.
Yeah.
Thought this laser was going to work, but it's not going to. But at the upper part, I would want them to stay out of that.
Well, it looks like there's a pond that leads directly into that as well.
Yeah, there is a small pond, and they do have, on the plan that I have, they show a buffer around the pond, so they're gonna stay away from that. So they kind of have, what you don't have is they're gonna have a pasture here, and then they show having pasture here and then leaving a buffer. I would say, have your pasture here, stay out of the wetland, and then okay to have these ones as they were proposing, but
How
that
many
would be
horses
mine.
were they asking for total?
Total of, what was it?
Was it 6?
Two regular, three small, and one medium. A couple of them are just miniature little ones. And then they also goats.
And goats.
2 Nigerian dwarf goats.
So how did this come to this commission?
So the Auburn Water District actually has the right to weigh in and say yes or no to something like this. And the way I see it, the commission has the district creates the laws, the commission enforces them. So the reason I brought this to the commission is I would normally see the watershed manager reviewing this, making recommendations, the commission supporting that, and then we send that back to the district to say, hey, you really, weigh in, and this is what you ought to do. So that's why I brought it to this.
Is this the same body of water we talked about at the last meeting that was really
No,
cesspool?
no,
This is not winter.
no. And I have that one to talk about next. So this is the first one. The second two, they have not submitted complete plans. There is one for Blanchard, 16 Blanchard Road, which they're looking to put 30 head of cows on that property. I do not have any other information because they haven't submitted anything else. So there's really nothing I would get back to them and say, hey, you need to submit this information. I can provide that feedback to them. We don't have enough from you to give you feedback. And the other one is just for a couple of horses up at 244 Johnson Road. And they did supply a nice map showing what they're going to do for erosion control, how they're going to plant a buffer around the property, and they're taking some next steps, but they don't have a phosphorus plan or a manure plan. So we need more information out of them. So the only one that's complete at this time is the 833 Summer Street. And they are actively waiting for a response because they're actually moving from Washington State and transporting these animals across to bring here. So
Maybe.
Well,
So-
what if we say no? We're not moving?
Well, so Mike,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that 833 Summer Street, you would like us to take action and have an opinion on.
the other two, I would like, you'd allow me to get back to them and say, hey, you need to supply this additional information for us to review it. We don't have enough to give you an answer at this time. But yes, the 833, I would like to give them some feedback, or at least provide feedback from the commission that I can then move forward to the district to say, look, this is what the commission we've reviewed and what we've said.
Okay.
So would you be looking for like a 50-foot buffer between that wetland and whatever their pasture is, or 100
Yeah,
foot?
I would say at least a 25-foot from the actual wetland on that property, yep.
What does their phosphorus control plan say?
So, again, I apologize, I should have forwarded this to everybody.
Yeah, I
If
thought
I need to
I
make
had
copies,
it.
I can.
Okay, yeah, we can, probably just this phosphorus plan, we can,
I think we should do that and
Yeah.
take that up under item 6E.
Under
So I stuck it
business.
in there as a possible need to take action.
okay.
Okay.
So I'll move on, just a couple other items real quick. The East Auburn Dam, I did report at the last workshop that, we had a few dam issues. The East Auburn Dam, I'm still trying to figure out who actually owns the dam. I believe the Auburn Water District has maintained operation rights of the dam, but the property is owned by the commission. In the past, it's been kind of a partnered effort. A few years ago, we did hire a consultant to do a emergency action plan and to provide some flood zone maps, and that was through the commission. So I'm not sure who should take the lead on this, but I think I've got this one taken care of. I'm working to update the emergency action plan as required. We already have an O&M plan, so I'll be submitting that to them. And the Auburn Water District will take action to make repairs to the area around the dam, which is tree and brush removal. So I feel like we'll be in compliance with this. This is more of an FYI at this point. But it is something I guess we should figure out officially who owns it or how we retain ownership of the dam, but not the land, I guess. I don't know. I think that land was part of the land transfer when we merged the properties of Lewiston and Auburn together, but why the dam itself stayed operationally under the district, I don't know that. But I think it's kind of a moot point. We'll get this compliance issue corrected.
So are you asking for us to do anything tonight, like?
No, I think we're good on that.
You guys draft some kind of agreement or anything like that, or you think you can move forward and bring something to us at a future date?
I think I can move forward with this.
Okay.
The last one,
I think it was a Freudian slip.
What's the point?
I just wanted to show you this visual tonight. So I met with Eric Cousins from the city of Auburn a few weeks back. As you know, this has been kind of a work in progress here. Right now, the watershed boundary off Grace Lawn Road is currently back to its original boundary line of this yellow dotted line. At one point, under the recommendation of FB Environmental, the city had moved that watershed boundary line to the red line, which is up towards the lake, and then back over here, following down around that. There was a citizens initiative petition filed. The city repealed that decision, and they moved it back to the yellow dotted line. The Auburn Water District trustees had, when that watershed boundary was changed, had adopted a link to the map for that boundary. So essentially right now the city recognizes this, the district had adopted that. We had hired CDM Smith to do a peer review of the FB environmental report, and they said, well, based off from the lack of knowledge, we recommend that you use this blue dotted line as your boundary to be conservative until you did further investigation to say, yeah, this can be, or no, it needs to stay within the watershed. And that's what a few meetings ago, we adopted, that we support that pending the decision by the drinking water program, which we still haven't received feedback from them of their visit of this Grace Lawn pit. And I guess the reason I'm bringing this all up is because this is kind of where we're at with this, and I see a potential issue that we're going to need to discuss or consider, and that's this green line over here. There is the potential for plans to come forward for development in this area, and it would be contingent upon moving this watershed boundary. And one thing that hasn't been considered by any of the consultants, FB, CDM Smith, is they didn't look at this piece of land right here. They all, basically drew a line here and were considering everything in there. Nobody really considered this. It has been shown through topography maps that area internally drains into the gravel pit. So if a drop of water falls here right now, it drains into here. And there is groundwater data that shows that area does go in this direction, as does the groundwater report showing it for the pit going down that direction. But it hasn't been something that, we had ever considered as a commission, and it wasn't something that the district had ever looked at. Right now, I'm just kind of showing you this as an FYI, and that it is going on. And I just want you to be aware that probably at some point, if a proposal is made to either rezone this or to reshape the boundary again, that this will come up in discussion as should that be removed from the watershed. So again, I don't have a specific request to do that at this time, but I did meet with Eric, and we talked about this, and I said, well, that could be a problem because the CDM Smith peer review didn't look at that. And we just can't, unless we've got something, we need something to go off.
And is that little piece part of the pit?
It's part of the same piece of property, yeah. And I do believe if lands do come forward, that would be part of the area that they would like to redevelop or reuse. But again, nothing's official there, I don't have a.
Mike, do you know why they
Yeah,
removed
so
all the
they're
trees
planning.
along the road? Are they doing some upgrades to utilities or something?
So there is right now, Mount Auburn Ave is under reconstruction. It was actually supposed to be under reconstruction last year, but because of material shortages, they didn't do the project. So a section of Mount Auburn Ave, scroll down, is getting reconstructed. And so they took the trees along the edge because the road's got to be widened there, and you can't go towards the cemetery because there's things you can't move there. So they're going in the other direction. So that's why the trees were within the right of way, and that's why those got removed. So again, it's just more of an FYI, but I wanted the commission to be aware that that will most likely come up at some point. So, but I don't have a specific request for you to go over right now.
Okay.
That's what I had for staff report.
I'm gonna leave that under new business, just come back to it and ask if the commission wants us to look at that ahead of time or wait for a proposal to be made first. So. Excellent. Any questions? Any questions for Mike?
Just back to the ag resource protection land and the livestock issues.
Yes. Yep.
Isn't the city of Auburn proposing a prohibition of livestock?
Yes, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
When we discuss this later
Okay,
on in
it's
the
gonna
agenda,
be
that's
discussed.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Under old business, discussion of possible recommendations to AWD for protection of the Lake Auburn Watershed, review and possible adoption. So, mea culpa here, I did not write that letter. And what happens is, as I sat down to draft it, I realized that while we all agreed on the recommendations, and we wordsmithed our recommendations, and we approved specific recommendations that we wanted to send to AWD, we did not decide what format we want to use. We didn't decide, is this the kind of thing where LawPAC is saying, we want AWD to enter into a process to write rules about this and come back to us and for final adoption? Is it a friendly letter we're sending them? Is it a resolve? So we didn't decide any of that stuff. And as I sat down to draft it, I realized that's really going to depend. That's going to determine how that document from us gets written. If it's a friendly letter, sort of a friendly letter saying that it's something we want to begin, then that letter is relatively short with a small amount of background, with the understanding that it's asking them to begin a process that would be more involved in as they go on. If it's us saying, listen, we reviewed it, whereas, we're telling you this is what should happen, then that's a different document. So we need to decide. I think we've come to pretty good agreement on what it is that we would like them to consider, but to what level do we want them to consider and how?
So, I mean, if we're making these recommendations, I mean, I guess maybe it's an assumption I was making, and I guess I thought that we would be hoping that they would adopt those recommendations to, again, protect the water supply. But again, I could be wrong in my interpretation of that.
No, I got the sense that we were saying, no, we think that AWD should adopt these.
Yeah.
I think it's more a question of, or do we want to write a document that says, that's really resolved, because that's, if we're really putting our foot down and saying we want you to do this now, then we would probably write that as a resolve. Not to be funny, whereas if we were to say that we want to enter into a process, we might send it more of a letter that LawPEC believes these should be adopted, and we're asking you to begin a process with us to draft things, right? So it's like, are we saying we're asking you to do this, or is it we're asking you to start a process where we work on doing this? And I know that sounds like semantics, but it's two different letters, and I don't want to draft both.
My understanding was we were asking Auburn Water District to make the policy and the adoption. So I would think we would be drafting what you said, the friendly letter with our recommendations, and that we're willing to enter into a process with them.
Correct, because they asked for us to hold off until they had an opportunity to speak to their respective communities. So I would agree with you, Camille, it's more of, hey guys, let's work this out and get going, instead of us telling them what to do.
Right,
Or trying to tell them what to do.
yeah,
Nobody likes to be told what to do.
yeah.
I don't think we need to give a big, long background on how we came to those.
It's all based on
Yeah.
the reports.
Clear and
And I think
concise.
I think if it's a friendly
Friendly,
letter
yeah.
saying that, our recommendation is that you develop policy and adopt policy that achieves these specific goals, and that's. Okay.
Evan, couldn't we even be more proactive and have an engineer look at these recommendations and actually provide a summary, with an engineer stamp, like, hey, these are all recommended. And then that's something the water trustees could look at and just get it done,
I mean, we have that though, right? There's nothing that we recommended that it wasn't recommended by an engineer in
Right,
any of those
report,
reports.
So,
Yeah.
as long as,
We didn't come up with that.
if the trustees are gonna have to try to decipher that, obviously we're gonna depend a lot on staff.
Well, I think doesn't need to be a huge letter like this,
Yeah.
but there could be a short paragraph stating where those recommendations specifically came from.
I like that.
Yeah.
Based on all the stuff we've done in the
Right.
last 18 months.
And we name off what they are,
Yep.
and the
Okay.
points we've taken out of those that we think should be considered.
Yeah.
We recommend being.
They should enter into a public process to achieve that.
Mhm.
2 of my 3 towns I've spoken with, and they're really excited.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Okay. So, from my standpoint, I'm not sure that we need a further motion on this. I just think we really need clarification as to what it is. The motion was to send those recommendations. It was really what was the format, so. Any objections to what I'm hearing is that this is really a shorter letter outlining the recommendations, and that we're asking AWD to enter into a public process to develop policy and adopt those recommendations, and that's, okay. Great, and Camille, I'll give you all my notes so you can write that letter.
That would be the last thing we did.
Yeah.
Without even a
Seems
smile.
really-
That was good,
Yeah.
without even a smile, you said that.
Okay.
Pretty sneaky.
So that was why,
We were
that,
pretty detailed though.
so I think that was really all we needed to discuss on this one. Again, because we did at length spend time last time, I think. Camille, I'll also make sure that you have the actual language that we adopted in terms of, because we did change some of the recommendations from what was in the agenda
Yeah.
package.
Yeah, last time.
You're much better at having that language than I am, so
I'll
whatever
gi-
you
yeah, I'll
provide
give
me
it-
would be helpful.
Excellent, excellent.
As his parting gift, he might be able to write that letter for you.
I might even send it to you.
Yeah, that would be
And you can
Okay.
put your name at the
appreciated,
bottom of it.
Yeah.
appreciated.
Like, I'll put it
Since
in my
you've got all
notes.
the notes, it might be faster for you.
Evan agrees.
It's on
Draft.
Send me a rough draft.
Rough draft.
Yeah.
Evan agrees to draft, there we go. All right, so 6, moving on to new business. This is something that Rick and I told you we were going to be working on. We do have some ideas and kind of frameworks that we talked about. Again, I cannot tell you how much of a burden it is off my shoulders to be stepping down here, but also a planning board, given everything that's been going on with me this year. So I'd love to tell you that we have like a specific draft and we don't, and that's primarily because I told Rick not to worry about it, and I do it. And, so we don't have the draft of the bylaws. What we do have is we have
A concept.
we have the concept. We did talk about some of the things that we know we're going to do are adopt the sort of abridged Robert's rules that Marianne had presented at previous meetings. We do have the secretary's a description of the secretary's job position. I think it'd be a hop, skip, and a jump to get the treasurer, and I know you're just coming on, Tracy, so we're expecting that from you right away. And then we talked about some basic rules of order, specifically how does something get on the agenda. I think we had all agreed that the draft would include something like, requires two or more commissioners to make a request. So we have those framework things. I think what we really need is a group of people that can actually sit down, like, and actually have time, one or two people willing to sit down and actually draft something that can come back. So that's why this is here. So first question, we want to make it ad hoc, or we just want to ask a couple people to do it, just appoint them to do it, say, like, you guys are the ones that we're going to ask to do this, and would there be any volunteers to do that? Know that.
I'll volunteer to help somebody, since you're supposed to be starting it.
Okay, yeah, all right. So Mary Ann, you'd volunteer to work on that, would you be willing to continue? Okay. So do we feel comfortable having Mary Ann and Rick work on this?
Nothing's getting passed until it comes here.
Yeah.
It's just a framework so we can talk about it. Just put something on paper, then we all look at it and
Okay,
throw
so,
something away, add something.
so to make it official, I'm going to seek a motion asking Mary Ann and Rick to develop a draft based on the discussion we've had so far that we can review at a future meeting.
So moved.
Second? Is there a second? I'll take Amy, she was faster, although quieter. All right, I'll assume there's no debate, so I'll call the roll. All those in favor? All right, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much for doing that. Last meeting, one of the commissioners had asked that we discuss the creation of an ad hoc committee with regard to the Southern Link Trail, and during that discussion it was really talking about formalizing, I got the sense it was to formalize and present a plan for future development that we could vote on at some point to implement. I didn't get the sense it was like make an ad hoc to go like do the Southern Link Trail, but really yeah, the part of that plan exists. Dan, I know that was
Yeah.
Isn't it exist?
But I think Jonathan Labonte, because he reached out to me, I think at the City of Auburn, he's working on that also. I mean, has he gotten with you?
Yeah, Erica and I have met with him, I think, twice. And it's definitely a project that we want to do. It's just, it's not like a walking trail on a property that the public is already allowed on. Like the original plan is potentially paving the trail and its miles on the property that's not open to the public right now in the most sensitive part of the lake. So it's something that's been kind of on the back burner, but with more guidance, like, we're definitely open to it. So
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to get permission from the commission to be a part of that discussion, because through the snowmobile clubs, we're also working on the Northern Lake Trail now. So we have landowners along the Holbrook Road, which will connect Winter Trail, or it could be a summertime multi-use trail. Along Holbrook Road, it'll connect the basin to the Whitman Spring Road trails, and then cut through the old Land Lab properties, which I think the commission owns those now. So there's a lot going on as far as willing landowners that want to give up perpetual easements for future, trails, a trail around the lake, basically, if you've ever been down the Back Bay and you've hiked or run or walked down through there, it's definitely possible.
So, yeah, so I guess what I'm hearing is, I guess I'm looking at this and I'm saying, up to now, the commission has sort of been like, we do ask staff about it every once in a while and it comes up, and do we want to continue with that model, or did we want to create an actual ad hoc committee that was going to, like, say 2 or 3 commissioners that are going to sit down and talk with staff and try to, sounds like there's a plan, and the question is, moving forward, does the commission know the whole plan? Like, what do we want to move forward with this? Are we comfortable moving forward the way we have been moving forward, or do we want an actual body?
What role we play in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
Make
make
those
Well, should we start with getting someone to come present what the plan currently is? Like, I don't have any clue of all, you know what I mean?
But if
Like,
we start a small ad hoc committee, they could get all that information
And bring it back to us. Yeah,
And
that's
nothing's
fine.
gonna get done until, just like the bylaw committee, nothing's gonna get done, we're just gathering information, bringing it to the group. I think Dan is a natural person to lead that up and get information and see how we can move forward on it. Is it possible
So
to
it's
move
a
forward?
one-person ad hoc committee?
Well, with
I think
somebody
it might
else.
help.
I think Alan's
I
also.
think I'm on board. I'm okay with that.
Interested.
Yeah.
It's a big interest.
All right.
So Dan and Alan, let's
Okay.
make a motion to appoint Dan and Alan ad hoc committee for, how did that say?
It's okay to meet
For
at
the
Grady's,
settlement
right?
trail.
Talk about
Yes.
trails. I mean,
Yes, it is.
okay.
To do-
We can't,
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that Rick made a motion.
I'll second that.
There's a second. Is there debate on that motion? That motion was specifically to create an ad hoc committee appointing Dan and Alan to do this work of presenting information and to LawPac with regard to the Sutherland Trail at this point. And then if we need them to do more, we'll move forward with it. So we had a second,
All in
yes?
favor?
Yes.
All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, you guys are abstaining because you're appointed. All right. Mike, you got that? Okay. So the next one, we had talked about the cumbersome, so I don't know if you guys will have your interlocal with you. If you look, what page am I looking at? So we're on page 6, last paragraph of item 4. Members appointed to represent one or more towns shall be elected or appointed. No, that's not it. The sentence above that.
What page is that?
Said page 6.
6. Is it 6? Okay, there's a sentence, I apologize, it's the middle of the page. The member representing the towns of Minot, Hebron, and Buckfield shall be appointed for a 1-year term on a rotating basis unless otherwise agreed by the municipal officers. So, it sounds like what's happened with Glenn, and Glenn brought his documentation, sent it to both myself and Mike with regard to reappointment, but that it's sort of a cumbersome thing if the 3 towns are just going to continue to appoint one person, which is essentially what they've done.
I spoke with both Buckfield and Minot, and they're in favor of creating a 3-year term instead of a 1-year
So
term.
they like a 3-year term.
So if there's going to be a local agreement, it would accept it.
Well, so this is why this one. So there's 2 ways to do this, right? The interlocal agreement says unless otherwise agreed upon by those municipalities. So one option is for us to ask Glenn to say, can you get them to agree to a long-term agreement stating that despite what it says in the interlocal, they've written that they've agreed to do this? Or do we want to ask that the interlocal be amended? I think asking, it sounds like it would be easier for Glenn to handle that with those municipalities than it would be for us to go say, we want to change the interlocal. Only because I think that it's a small change, and I don't think it's necessarily a substantive change. But any change to the interlocal is going to really create some questions. And, you know, if there are questions that we really need answered, I say ruffle those feathers. But I'm not sure that this one rises to the level of needing to ruffle those feathers. So how does everyone else feel about this?
Just some kind of written agreement letter, like
See, I
sign
think-
is behind.
I think if it's any change to the, whether this one is substantive or not, it sets precedent for we can change anything in the interlocal agreement.
Well, actually, I
by
think what you're referencing, the language already allows for
Correct.
those 3 towns to do this.
Oh, so it
Correct,
says
yes.
it in there.
It says they
Right.
can.
Unless it's,
They
what
have to
was the
sign
wording?
off on it.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
it
so
says,
there's a,
the member representing the towns of Minot, Hebron, and Buckfield shall be appointed for a 1-year term on a rotating basis unless otherwise agreed by the municipal officers.
Yeah.
okay, so that gives the, okay.
Yeah.
So, so there's 2 choices. We either ask that this be changed to say 3 years, or I think the better play in this case would be.
Yeah.
Or I'll just keep it 1 year, be done
Well-
next January.
Okay, so here's the thing. First off, do all members of the commission believe that the 1-year rotating term does represent an issue?
The commission doesn't have a say in it.
Right, I don't think the
We don't have a
commission,
say.
we need
No,
to
they
be
don't.
presented that. If
Exactly.
Glenn wants to go ask them and they agree to it, they need to come and present it to us to.
No, they absolutely
consider.
can.
All they gotta do is appoint me for 3 years and never talk to you.
So I
Yeah.
guess what I'm saying,
Right.
Amy, is,
But
are
then-
we
but
asking
we would-
Glenn to do this, or is Glenn now just gonna go act on his own and come to us later and we're gonna say, oh, Glenn has an idea? Is it coming from us, or is it gonna come from Glenn?
I don't know
Glenn's
why
gonna
we
bring
would
it to
ask
us?
Glenn to do
It
it.
should come from the
Right.
towns.
Yeah.
Because
we
it's
ask.
paying-
Well, they're not gonna
It's
think about it
his-
until I tell them, so.
Okay.
It should come from the towns.
And is that a general consensus? Is there anyone that's opposed to that? All right.
3 more years.
You're on your own. Come up with a plan.
Ad hoc committee appointment.
All right.
I vote no.
Yeah, all right. Next item, discussion of proposed farm plan at 833 Summer Street. So this is where, and I guess this is on there twice, I didn't realize it was gonna be a group through the other, so. Dan, I believe you had some questions?
Just, just the fact that, you know, I thought I heard there was something going on, and I thought maybe you or Mike might be informed, or even Glenn, as to what the city's proposal is to kind of ban livestock in the ag land.
So I did look into this today because I was confused on this myself. And I believe the city council has made a recommendation that I don't even know if has been put down to the planning board yet, maybe you can answer this, that for them to review no longer allowing any new farm permits within the ag zone of the watershed overlay.
Right, so no new homes and no new livestock farms, I think was their specific.
Yeah,
language.
and the livestock's included the language, which included horses, cows,
Correct, yeah.
piggeries and such.
Yes. So yeah, so that action has started at the council, but that has not been.
Hasn't gone anywhere.
That has not been kicked to the planning board yet. I say kicked, that's the wrong word.
Lovingly passed.
I'm not sure, the council I know has at least taken one vote on it, but I don't think they've done their second vote, is what's happening.
Could just going back to that, you know, the people who are looking at moving here that own this property,
That's
just
could be,
to say there's a concern,
Yeah.
and you got concerns.
Well,
He
if it's
walked
approved
through.
before they
Well, it's
pass
like
it,
if
then
we
they're.
get permits before these changes are made, I mean, it could get pushed through, right, before
Yeah.
changes are made within Auburn.
Uh-huh.
Right, like how,
I got concerns with the plan.
It's not, they're already packed,
I know, but they're
livestock
gonna
and
plant
trailers ready to head out.
I don't see this as a phosphorus plan.
Yeah, no.
It says, well, research shows that these things might work. I'm not saying we're gonna do any of it.
that's not.
Yeah,
And
that's-
it's gonna plant grass that is the right grass where they can.
But I'm sure it's not.
As someone who reviews,
Yeah,
who actually has to review phosphorus plans, this
it don't work.
is not a phosphorus plan.
I
A phosphorus
agree.
plan for a piece of property requires a surveyed site plan with siting and
Engineer stamp.
and engineers, an engineer stamp, yep. That's a phosphorus plan. So on those grounds,
I don't think we deny it, I think you just table it and for,
We
waiting
need
for
a-
more information.
Yeah, just like the other one.
So no action at this point, up or down, just wait, we'll need more information.
we can
Does this
we
meet
can
the
have it
standards of
later. I
past?
can tell you right now that I think that
I've never
if
done
the-
one of these
if-
before.
Never looked at one of the old ones or anything.
My opinion is that
It's
if
very similar to
LawPec
what's been-
has voted to send recommendations to AWD that that we literally said, no new residential or farm development
Yeah.
within that zone, then I don't think that we could, in good conscience, say, well, because it is allowed now, you know, like we should allow it. This is not like a permitting process. In a permitting process, someone might be able to pull a permit to do something right before a rule gets changed. That's different. Permitting process is not like about our opinion. Permitting process is about, did you cross your T's and dot your I's. This is not asking us about a permitting process. This is literally asking us our opinion on whether or not we believe they've developed a farm plan that will protect the lake, right? So that's, to me, a very different process, and there's an important distinction between those.
But they are pulling a permit, right?
They're gonna pull a permit with the city.
But
They don't pull permits with us. They just get approval of a farm plan through us.
We have to approve a plan.
Yeah.
So my question was, is this in line with what previous phosphorus plans looked like?
That's an excellent question. The previous farm plans haven't necessarily been brought to us. So,
I believe this one was modeled after the one on West Auburn Road.
so I can tell you the phosphorus plan for West Auburn Road was much more substantial than this. If this might have been what was handed to Watershed staff, and I think
Right.
that there was more than this handed to Watershed staff, but that plan had an actual engineering stamp on it with
And we're not the final say in this, right?
No, I don't think we get the rule. I think it's the watershed manager that gets the.
It's been left with the watershed manager, but ultimately it's AWD that has the city can't approve this plan unless AWD says,
As the review authority.
as the review authority of it.
So yeah, so at this point, it's just a recommendation from us. I guess we don't have the authority to go forward. Yeah, but I mean, the other piece too is that the city is. I guess I have, like, they're gonna well, okay. Rick says I do a very good job of not wearing my planning board hat here, but I cannot help but look at this and say, I don't think they actually have the acreage to have that livestock. And I would have to sit down and look, but I know a horse is at least 1 acre. It might actually be an acre and a half.
I believe this is like 7.5 acres.
6.62.
if you're taking that, but if you're taking a big chunk out of the back,
Right,
and you're now bringing it below that,
right, and so like that has to be open to pasture, and then if you get the goats, I think it's another 3/4 of an acre per goat or something. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, like, I don't even think they've met the requirements on the city side. Not that that's our concern, but I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, if they haven't met that standard, maybe what is our concern is that we would say they're overburdening. If they haven't met, okay, so there's a municipal standard. Okay, it's not our job to say, okay, you haven't met municipal standard, but we could look at it and say, the municipal standard exists for a reason, and if you're exceeding that standard, perhaps you're overburdening the land because that standard exists ostensibly for a reason. So there's that piece, and then Dan asked about, yeah, you asked about the conservation zone, right? Yeah, so, I don't know. I think at the very least, we have to say that I don't think anyone sitting at the table looks at this and says that this is adequate.
I make a motion to table until we have more information.
Wow.
It's like looking for, do you need a recommendation for us to bring back?
I would like guidance on, so either say, let them know this phosphorus plan is not adequate for us to make a decision or determination on, some sort of something so I can give them, otherwise they don't have any direction on what to bring back or what is not adequate. You know, show that this meets city requirements for zoning, show an adequate stamped surveyed phosphorus plan, you know, give that recommendation, I think, is what I'd like to see.
And
I agree that
I would include our concern regarding the wetlands
Yeah.
and the pond, et
Yeah.
cetera, in your specific,
but Evan brought up just a great point a few minutes ago.
yeah,
Saying if we're sending a letter to AWP,
I know.
AWD, excuse me, that we're not recommending any development or any farmland, why are we even considering that?
Like, if we're
It should-
giving a
it should
recommendation
be-
right now,
it
our
should be a
recommendation
no.
should just be no.
It should
based
be a
on-
no.
Yeah,
right
that's
off.
how I feel.
We're sending one letter and then we're saying something else, so
No, I'm happy to say
I
no.
quickly changed my mind after you mentioned
Yeah,
that and said, yeah, no.
I mean, I agree with that response as well. I need to
He
give
needs
some
a
sort of
response.
response, not that we tabled it.
Okay.
You
So
know.
maybe we say the Watershed Protection Commission is recommending to AWD this, therefore, we wouldn't agree with your proposal, because we're recommending that there be no livestock.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Sure.
Second.
So, to clarify, Amy, let me hear, tell me if you've
Go
heard this
ahead.
right. That you made a motion that we do not recommend approval of the farm plan based on the finding that we are recommending to AWD that no new agricultural development occur within that zone already.
Yes.
That's what you were saying?
That sounds
And that was the second you made? Okay. Is there any debate on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, I was just waiting for
Yeah,
that.
sorry.
Sure. Okay, so unanimous. All right, excellent. Yes, that was, I had the right to see your hand, correct?
All right, thank you.
And you have what you need from us there? Okay. I'm gonna move on. Grace Lawn gravel pit. We heard from Mike that it's probable that that portion of the parcel would come into question. Do we want to wait for that process to occur before we seek clarification, or do we want to seek clarification? I assume that we would ask
I guess
CEI to review that, since they reviewed the rest of it, but.
I guess I would follow just our previous statement that we just made. We're sending a letter to the water district saying that no new development or anything in the gravel pit. Nothing. I say we send that again. Just,
We didn't say that, though.
well, we said that in the previous, like the,
We didn't, we
We
said that
recommended-
they shouldn't do anything. We said that we were only in favor of a shift in the watershed boundary if it also met approval from the state
The
drinking
drinking
water
water
program.
And we also said that we would want their plan, what are you gonna do here, and how is it going to impact?
Yes,
That would be the other component.
Right,
Like, if we
yeah.
don't have that, then we don't know where the water's gonna go.
right.
There's no plan now, right? This is.
Not that
at any
not
point,
that
there
we
could be a
know,
proposal
not that
put
we've
in
seen.
to-
Not public.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the question
Yeah.
is here, really, do we want to,
Be proactive.
do we want to say, we want to know where that water is flowing now ahead of time, but we don't necessarily need, but we can choose to make a statement about it now, once we find out, or wait, but do we want to find out where that water is going now, officially? So we're ready to deal with anything that happens, or do we want to wait for a process to begin and then determine where that water is going? To me,
So that's two things though, right? Because it could be going in a certain way now, but then based on their plan, that will impact the way it goes in the future, right?
I think that we would want to know how it goes now, so that way we
Right,
can say, this is how it is now.
This is how it is
And
now,
you need to
it's-
demonstrate that it's not going to change that.
Right.
You can prove it's gonna go where it
Yeah.
needs to go.
CDM Smith made the conservative boundary recommendation, but they did not look at that piece. So that might be a task that the commission says to CDM Smith, hey, thanks for the previous recommendation. Can you look at this piece and make, based off from available information, can you make a recommendation? That would be,
How big a space is that? It's like acres?
it's acres.
Okay.
Yeah, it's substantial.
Yeah, it's-
But we're not only talking about that piece
I'd
in
be
this
guessing.
Yeah,
conversation.
we are.
Oh, just that,
We're asking about whether that piece
yeah,
lies within the potential watershed
Watershed,
boundary
okay.
or not.
And
Based
where
on-
the water is flowing.
And
Where the
well,
water's
that's,
Part
we'll
of that's
determine the
part of it,
watershed boundary,
okay.
in their best opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's that?
What's that gonna cost?
This is the next question. do we want to spend money on that now?
Right.
I would say it'd be nice to get an estimate, and then when the developer comes forward, say, yeah, here's the bills, so we can figure out, we can say yes or no.
I mean, the whole analysis was $6,000, I believe, for the CDM Smith evaluation.
That's not bad.
They have all the information now because they did the last evaluation. I would think this would be a much smaller portion, $500 to $1,000. That's
Well,
a guess.
Well, I would love to ask the developer to pay for it. If they're not compelled to, I'm not sure that they would.
They want to use it, they want to put anything over there.
I mean,
I think it's worth giving an estimate. You know.
Can get
I
us
mean, it's $500, yeah, maybe we'll move forward, but if it's
Estimate.
4,000, then
yeah.
Because will that also affect the reconstruction of Mount Auburn Avenue? Wouldn't that help consideration of, you know, they're clearing the trees, they're doing that work,
I
they're
would
gonna be
assume that it's gonna make a
sidewalks.
difference, yeah.
So that's all part of that area, so it would be good information not only for the developer, but for the city of Auburn on that public right of way.
So I'm gonna bring it back, it sounds like everybody at least wants this at some point. The question is, do we want the estimate or not first?
Yeah, I think, I want to move that we ask Mike to ask CDM Smith or Erica, when she gets back, an estimate for this additional work.
Okay, so there's a motion, we're all clear as to what the additional work is. The specific part of the proposal that was shown to us by Mike earlier. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion, a second, is there any debate on this? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Any in opposition, none being, all right. Just by way of information, item for a future agenda, this is the item that I kicked forward that I did put on this agenda, was discussion of using easements or deed restrictions to further protect lands owned by LAPEC within the watershed. I think if we're gonna put that on a future agenda, if there's gonna be specific questions we have of staff, that we should ask that now. For instance, I think that it will be helpful for members of the commission to understand what a conservation easement is, and then how it works. Also, what other, or for instance, you could use deed restrictions. The conservation easement acts as a deed restriction, but you can use deed restriction outside of the easement model, so that we all understand what those things are first, so we understand implications before we determine whether or not we're going to put those on our property. So I am asking that when this comes on the agenda, I'm assuming next month, that we at least get that. Or is there other stuff that folks want to be a part of that discussion that they want to have a heads up on now?
I would think it would make sense to have an inventory.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yep. So an inventory of the properties we own that could be subject to these. Yep.
Or existing easements and deed
Yep.
restrictions.
Excellent. Yep. Any other information folks think that we really need
I
to
just
hit the
even
ground
think
running?
some information on pros and cons, you know, like what their thoughts, I guess, on
Yep. What are the
pros and
advantages,
cons of the
disadvantages
different
of?
ones, the different alternatives.
Yep.
It's all trade-offs.
Is there a legality issue if we've already agreed to an easement that we now need to, or a monetary issue, if we want to go back and request a more conservative or constricting easement?
Yep.
I think there's going to be a
We're gonna have to
monetary-
vacate one easement in order to,
Exactly.
and so that's what I'm saying. I think everyone at the table needs to understand the process of what that looks like and how that happens.
And it might not be across the board of all the lots, there might be specific lots that make sense to do different things
Well, I think that's,
that don't have easements or.
I think that's where having an inventory of the lots we have and also the easements and deed restrictions that already occur are there is important.
So a stupid question then. If we already own it, we don't need an easement.
We don't need an easement, but if for some reason we were to no longer exist,
Yeah.
my assumption is that Lake Auburn will be the drinking water for the communities that need will grow over time. I don't see us. I think that there's a possibility. Who knows? In 100 years there may be no LAPEC, but there's still going to be a Lake Auburn, right? And so we just need to decide whether those are actions we want to take or not.
This has been discussed many times by commissioners perpetually protecting the land.
Right.
So regardless of whether the law pack is in existence or not. But there are advantages and disadvantages. There are some serious financial disadvantages to doing it. That's why we need to discuss it, and everyone needs to understand that everything isn't just rainbows and
Then we
beaches.
need,
But
yeah, then we need all of it. Everything we've talked about,
yeah,
presented, so we can understand it.
anything else?
Who's gonna be doing all this work?
Well, that's the question.
Sounds like a lot of work.
My assumption is that
The inventory.
inventory is already done because we've
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah, we see Eric.
So the real question is presenting information on what these mechanisms are, how you enter into them, how you vacate them, and also, most importantly, how you enforce them. So though, understanding those three things, I think, are going to be important. And the question is, I mean, that is, it's work, but it's actually not as much work as you would think to be able to describe those things.
So who's gonna describe them to us?
Would we like to ask, we have not asked legal to do anything in a long time. This seems like would be a good place for us to ask Jim to come in because he's not going to be conflicted out on explaining that to us.
Good, because I don't want to hire that other attorney.
No. And our next meeting is March 10th, so it's before Eric has even back. And that would line just be.
So-
But it's the 10th, March 10th.
My-
I thought we made quarterly.
That's what I said, I try to put them all in when we get to the calendar.
What was our next meeting? I can't remember. I think I said it to you. March. I thought it was April.
Have
Yeah,
April
I
14th?
agree. Anyway,
Oops,
I
sorry.
thought you said March.
No, I'm sorry.
what are we saying?
That was the one with the A at the end.
All right,
I
so,
thought I was gonna be ahead of the game here.
No, she said we
I guess I need to know
Sorry.
why are we even talking about it? What are the pros, what are the cons? Why, and you said commissioners have asked about it over the years. What does it mean for us? I have no idea why you want to do it, or what's the purpose, what's
It's
the
just a
goal?
perpetual protection of the lands that we own as law
But
pack.
there's,
So even if, so bring me up to speed, if law pack still exists, it will always be protected,
For the most part.
as long as law pack exists. And to be able to disband law pack, you need the municipalities to all agree to disband.
Well, I don't think it's
Correct.
a disbanding process. I think the process would happen, it would not, the function of this would not be required if we lost our waiver of filtration, or if we decided to filter our water. So it's black and white, clear as mud, that this organization would not be needed. Now, are we gonna run this organization and fund it?
So wouldn't, at that time, wouldn't this discussion be brought up then?
I don't know, I just think this is an opportunity for, the city's not fighting over land and using the value of that land for whatever they want to do, i.e. the cost of filtration, that we as environmentalists, and our responsibility to the drinking water and the quality of Lake Auburn, could put perpetual easements, restrictive easements, but it doesn't matter where we end up, this land around Lake Auburn will be protected perpetually. And right now, it could go, it could be a change of zoning, it could be it could be a filtration plant.
so I think that this discussion should keep going. So this is what I'm hearing. I'm not trying to cut us all short, but in the effort of being respectful of everyone's time, that that at least some commissioners are saying, I'm not exactly sure why LawPEC would go away in the first place. So we would need to know under what circumstances would LawPEC no longer be the entity that would control and protect these lands. Is that something that could happen? If it could happen, what are the mechanisms that would cause it to happen? Then commissioners are going to need to look at that and say, well, if at what risk level do we think that is? And if it's at a higher risk, do we feel it's important to perpetually protect the land? What are the options for protecting the land? but I think that that's all part of a debate that only happens once we have specific information. I think that specific information being, we talked about what those land protections are, right? Specifically, like how you enter into them, how they're executed, and how they're vacated. But it sounds like the other thing that we need is a primer and more education around what instances would cause LawPEC to no longer exist that we would worry about to say that this needs to be perpetually protected. Yeah?
The reason why I brought it up is I don't want to spend, like we were talking about spending $500 or $1,000 for a report, I don't want to spend $3,000, $4,000 for attorney fees to break down this if there's perpetually, sorry, my pocket's
Yeah, yeah.
just ringing.
No, mine was doing it a minute ago. It was driving me crazy.
Driving me nuts.
Yeah.
So it's more of a financial thing for me. I was hoping Dan could just answer some of those questions that I had. So I'm concerned on investing a lot of money to get an attorney to come back and say,
How much does it generally cost when
$400 or $500 an hour for these guys.
No,
to
it's,
do it.
ours are 175.
175?
So I think if Jim's
Okay.
here for an hour to explain this, I think that's money well spent.
I've got a,
Timer out.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah,
I know on a staff level, I've had this conversation with Erica and Sid and Kevin, and I think we as staff could come back with recommendations to answer the questions of, maybe why we should, why we shouldn't, when we should, and when we would have to. And then, we could present that to you and then have Jim come in and present the legal questions regarding doing that. And I think we could pretty easily pull that together. It's not a huge effort. Staff things, will be easy as far as the gym, pencil in 2 hours for a presentation and should
Okay.
cover it.
all right.
So why wouldn't the bylaws talk about the dissolve of the commission?
The interlocal agreement does, doesn't it?
Yeah, so, I guess those are the pieces that we may not have this entity may not have a say if it's in the interlocal agreement.
In terms of,
The dissolution of the organization.
Exactly.
no, we're not saying that this entity would have I don't think LawPEC would ever dissolve itself, that. it'd
But
be
you
sort of
talked about the
contrary to our
treatment
mission.
plant and, would we still
That'd be
be,
unnecessary.
exactly. So I guess that's just conflicting in my mind.
even
Which is why I think we need someone to come, so Dan said this, but I won't lie, I've heard that elsewhere too. I think what I'm hearing is we all kind of have a little bit of different information and it's gonna be in our best interest to all get on the same page, so let's go ahead and have that meeting. So everyone understands. Some of us are gonna walk into the meeting and, first of all of us are gonna walk into the meeting and learn something new. That's just gonna happen. We learn something new every time Jim comes in, every single one of us. But more importantly, when we walk out of that meeting, we wouldn't be having this discussion anymore because it would have been clarified, right? We would all be on the same page. So it's not, I don't think it's in our best interest to sort of squabble internally. I think it's our best interest to kind of, yeah, let's,
Be educated.
if we're sitting here and we can't necessarily all agree on this, or even have the same, or not even necessarily disagree, we just kind of have different understandings, I think it's in our best interest to become educated as an entity. There's enough controversy and fighting around this resource going on outside of this room. We're specifically tasked with protecting it, so I think the way we do that is by all having a shared understanding.
So would it make sense for us to all send questions to the chair or wherever that we don't understand? Because to me, it's like, some of the questions I would have, I'm not sure he would bring up in his presentation, because does the interlocal agreement prevent us from doing this? Because the interlocal agreement clearly states how this is taken apart, and if we've gone and put this in perpetual easements, does the interlocal agreement say that voids all of what we've done?
That's an excellent question, right? Like, those are the kinds of questions that have to be asked and answered, right?
Right. But he needs to be prepared for those.
Yes, I agree. But I guess at this point, I was clear, and I'm no longer clear whether everyone at the table actually even wants to have discussion. So that's number one. Do we want, so Mike believes that staff can pull this together and that Jim can come in and that piece is a pretty light lift. Is that something that we all want? Right, that's.
Education's good.
Are there any objections to that?
It's not costing us anything, so sure, it's just information.
Yeah. Okay. Glenn brought up the idea, but I'm going to throw this to Mike first. Would it be helpful if commissioners sent you specific questions?
I think it would be to help, particularly the gym side. You know, if somebody, you know, what Glenn just brought up was a very, very good point, and I would hate to, he comes prepared to give one speech and then he didn't come prepared to answer that.
I agree.
So if you have specific questions on whether it would be a question a staff would answer or a legal question, if we could pull those all together, we can make sure whenever we have this
And
informational, we can answer them.
You want those questions within the next 2 weeks?
That would be great.
All right, so Mike is saying he's open to questions from individual commissioners. Remember, we are a public entity, we are a public board. Please do not send those questions to everybody because whether meaning well or not, it's possible to then reply all, and it could look as though we're entering into a debate, and that's not really the point of that. It's really about getting questions to staff so they can be prepared. So within the next 2 weeks, so that means please send these by well, I guess 2 weeks would be the 22nd. So could we say by end of day on the 22nd? Just by end of business day? Does that work for you? Okay, excellent. So that will be on an upcoming agenda. Any other items that folks want on an upcoming agenda feel strongly need to be discussed?
I think we've given Mike a lot of responsibility as far as regulatory authority in the watershed. I would not like to see, and this is my opinion again, but also the opinion of the assistant district attorney, I would not like to see him being put in a position where he has to negotiate and do real estate transactions for us, because he's regulating these properties, and that regulation, you know, he's using his engineering, you know, basically degree and his certification and license.
I'm gonna pull Mike out of this one because I know you're saying Mike as the new
Well,
superintendent.
he's the only one right
Right.
now doing anything like that.
Right. So I guess what I'm hearing you say, Dan, is that next meeting what we really need to discuss is who is going to be responsible for real estate transactions.
Very good.
But
That will
wouldn't
go
that
on
be
the agenda.
part of the bylaws that we're gonna start working on?
Yep.
When we sign job titles,
Yep.
that type of, so that can be just put over here, part of our, you know, what's the responsibility, chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, somebody
Yeah.
does the,
I don't think anyone would object to you guys
just
throwing that down in some places as an idea because that will come back and we're all going to
So
discuss
it's
it.
a valid point.
But that's something that needs to be addressed. Excellent. Anything else that we want to see? Okay, all right. Next thing is an executive session.
Actually, I
Yeah,
just thought of something.
yeah.
At some point, I'd like to, you know, be able to communicate to Turner, and I'm sure Glenn's in some position about what responsibilities, I think at times they don't feel it's super clear what their responsibilities are in regards to what we do to preserve the quality of the water in regards to the areas that they, or bodies of water within their specific towns.
a thought.
Yeah.
Should we CC the letter that we're sending to the Auburn Water District to all the towns also?
I would absolutely agree with that.
Turner, Buckfield, just, we're sending it to, let's CC it to all of them, so they know what we're asking them to do.
It's a great idea.
So our recommendations are right there.
Yeah.
Because we specifically talk about the upper watershed.
Includes those towns, which is why we're represented in this.
Correct.
Just don't do it till the 27th.
We don't, I mean, since in the absence of formal rules of order, is there any objection to that? Okay, see no objection to that. We'll just go ahead and do that. Makes sense, instead of going through a whole process to make that happen.
So I think some of the comments from that side are going to be that if the regulations are imposed outside the community, they have no responsibility to enforce them. Only if the town adopts those rules as their own will they actually be required to enforce those rules. It'll be up on us or whoever enforces the rules down here to enforce those rules in the entire watershed. If the town can look at it as those are your rules, not ours.
They have to incorporate
Thing isn't, point for clarification, I guess I'm questioning. I guess it's Auburn Water District, if they approve it, that's a legislative power. So that enforces it in Turner and Buck.
And they're welcome to enforce it. It's not incumbent on
What
the
Glenn
town.
is saying is,
Okay.
there's a
The town
speed
doesn't-
limit, but the speed limit only matters when enforced, right?
Right.
So, these laws will exist, I think Glenn is kind of giving a heads up.
I mean, Buckfield,
Correct.
in the towns I
Probably
represent,
not going to-
code enforcement, I think there's 1.5 code enforcement officers shared between like 9 towns. So that code enforcement officer is not going to be doing it.
Yep.
They're going to look at it as, here's the state regs, or here's the town, actually here's the town regs, and I'm enforcing
Yeah,
it
there's
there.
the ordinances of the
So if the
town.
town doesn't adopt these willingly, they would have no requirement to actually do a whole lot.
Well, and that reality is fine, I mean, I think the point
Well,
is,
we still have to
that
do
like,
I think, don't you give permits in some of these towns?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So when you give a permit,
yeah.
you have to meet federal, state, and local laws, right? So I don't think you could get a permit issue for a house if it was
Yeah,
not
but
allowed.
all they're going to do is say, go see Auburn Water District, they're not going to.
Yeah, they're not gonna issue a permit though, right?
okay,
You need a permit?
okay, so I hear what you're saying, I think it's good for us, for that to be on our radar.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a debate for us to
No,
have, because it's a reality.
Yeah.
And, you know, God forbid we have to, you know, enforce some rules to protect our drinking water, I think we can manage, you know? I think it's important enough that we'll.
But they should be informed.
Yes, but they should be informed, yes.
Right, and if they know
What's
what
on
we're
the
talking
radar?
about, and if we can get them
They should
to
be
adopt
aware of
it,
that. They should be aware of
even better.
Even better, yeah.
Because now they're on board if we can adopt it.
All right, excellent. Anything else for future meetings?
Mr. Steer,
Yes.
I didn't make any comment during the public comment period because there was nothing to comment on at that point. May I ask Mr. Broadbent a couple of quick questions that relate to current matters that you've been discussing?
Are there any objections from commissioners to public comment or question?
Briefly.
Briefly.
Briefly, yes.
When I saw you last week, we discussed the fact that you were going to be going to a water conference toward the end of last week, and at which time you were going to be seeing the Safe Drinking Water Group. And if I recall our discussion, you were going to urge them to issue that letter report as soon as possible. Did you have any success with that?
So I did see a couple of the folks that were at the inspection, and I don't know if you'd call it urging, but it might have come up. And also Kevin reached out today and requested again, and they said they're working on it.
Okay.
So we have not got a reply.
Okay, thank you. Second question. The parcel that you were showing in conjunction with the potential new information or new water flow data to be provided by CDM Smith
Oh, yeah.
on the westerly edge of the gravel pit area along Grace Lawn Road, it seemed to show some vegetation on it. Was that smaller parcel that you were showing a part of the Berry Farm, or was that part of the JPG parcel within the gravel pit area per se?
That's part of the JPG parcel.
Thank you.
I know all our phones are wanted, I guess. All right. Excellent. So, we've been asked to discuss procurement of properties. So, because of that, we may want to do that in executive session. So at this time, I'm going to seek a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to 1 MSRA 405C, discussion or consideration of the condition, acquisition, or use of real or personal property permanently attached to real property or interest therein, or disposition of publicly held property, or economic development only premature disclosure of the information, prejudice, competitive, or bargaining position of the body or agency. I believe that it would if we didn't enter into executive session. So seeking a motion, there's a motion. Second, all those in favor?
I didn't see you writing that whole thing down.
I got it.
It's right there.
Hey, point of order, all those in favor of entering executive session? Okay, opposed?
Opposed?
Okay.
I'm not,
All right, we've exited executive session and now entered our regular meeting. As we all know, we cannot take action in executive session. However, do any members of the commission wish to take an action at this time?
I would make a motion that our secretary respond to the inquiry saying that at this we appreciate their interest, but at this juncture, we are not interested in selling any commission land at this point.
Is there a second?
Second.
Debate on the motion? Yeah, we'll give the second to Alan. All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed, none being, excellent. Okay. We've taken care of election of officers, so at this point, there's one motion left to make, and that is to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mary Ann, all those in favor?
Yay.
Our meeting
Our
is
next
adjourned.
meeting is just our regular scheduled meeting. We don't have
Alright.
any
It's April.
workshops.
What's the day of that meeting?
I got all the dates.
Second
if
Wednesday in
anybody wants them. April 12th.